You're not going to be able to postpone this. We've all been lucky. We've all been able to now. Some of us did have to evacuate Santa Luz years ago, but the signs all point to things getting worse and not better. And that's not just from natural disasters, from geopolitical events. So, I mean, we're at a higher, basically, nuclear readiness level than we've been in, 60 years or so? So there's all kinds of threats. And if you can stay in your house, if it's still safe, that's your best location. Don't bug out, don't evacuate until you realize you're safer doing so than not. You already have your resources, you have your materials, but the advantage of a bug out bag in your house is that you can live out of that in your house if you need to, but it's obviously portable, so you can throw it in the car and go when that eventuality occurs. So with lighting, and I'm gonna go through these kind of rapid fire. Bike lights. This is probably something you may have not thought of before. The reason why I recommend bike lights is that they have a very long life battery. They can run on 80% or full intensity for usually over an hour, sometimes several, but medium intensity for sometimes 6 hours. They're designed for cyclists who need to have full illumination in different weather conditions. So in rain, they're very well protected from rain. And they have straps. So that means you can create area lighting. Anything that has a pole, you can create down lighting in your tent, through an easy up like this, through any kind of vertical pole. Now your hands are free. And you don't just want a white light at night, because the white light will cause temporary night blindness. Your pupils will constrict, which means it's like the aperture and the lens of a camera. So with DSLRs, it's always a balance of how much light to let in. If your pupils are constricted because your light is so bright or someone in your camp is shining the light on you, now you're night blind, which is also another benefit to your advantage. If worst case scenario, someone's about to attack you, if you do have a very bright flashlight that you can immediately trigger on, that'll buy you a couple seconds, 3 seconds, where you can strike them with whatever you have. If you have a large enough flashlight, which is a very good weapon, if it's like a mag light, blind them and then hit them as hard as you can. It's a baseball bat. So the red light is going to protect you. Yeah. So if you have to evacuate, things are going to get crazy, and you are going to be better prepared than the majority of people. That means you're a target. So self-defense is critical. And if you are walking around, with a kit, and you don't have the ability to protect it, it's great. You just prepared for someone else. You just packed a bag for someone else. So it's always better to be pessimistic than optimistic in this environment. Optimistic will give you a false sense of security. Things that, just because they haven't happened before, doesn't mean they won't. So, this isn't a lesson on combat. It's not a lesson on how to fight your neighbors, of course, but it is a lesson on realism. If you've ever been to San Francisco at night, parts of it you don't want to go to, and parts of Oakland you don't want to go to. And I'm from up there, and I can tell you a couple stories. If there's time, I'll tell you later. But the point is, most people, like the Mike Tyson quote, they're not prepared until they get hit in the face. They never think these things would happen to them. And you're always better off assuming the worst and being wrong than assuming the best and being wrong and unprepared. So the red light is to preserve your night vision. So that can be a flashlight at night that helps you maintain your night vision, as well as is respectful to the people in your camp. And lastly, bike lights, depending on the manufacturer, have different unique flash patterns. So like a Bond trigger light, I can tell just by its flash pattern. And the reason that's useful is that you can use that as a signal to people in your camp, or if you're at a FEMA camp where there's no cell signal, there's no internet, there's no ability to communicate with your family, but you know that your family member is eventually going to trickle over there, you could strap that to the outside of whatever tent or canopy they're giving you. And if you've talked about this with your family before, they'll know to look for that flashing light. I mean, that even works in like a sports stadium or at a big event where you have to locate your family. You can see a flashing bike light if it's a clear view unobstructed by trees for miles. So that's why instead of just a regular flashlight, a bike light is rechargeable, it's durable, it's water resistant, and you can get them with a kit where it's red and white. Something to think of. You don't have to do any of these. Obviously, I don't care if you do or not. These are just things for you to consider. And then the headlamp. This is the Santa Luz headlamp. We might still have a few for sale. If you want, get with me after. But if you join the EPC as a neighborhood coordinator, as a volunteer, you get a headlamp. Are you about to say you never got your headlamp?
I have one, but where's the whistle?
Oh, it's on the strap. It's there.
Oh.
Yeah. Okay. Oh, good.
I'll go look.
Yeah, you do have a headlamp. Okay, good. Yeah, and it's USB rechargeable, and it's very water resistant. All right, so comms. So our internet is very delicate. It depends on the power being up. It depends on the nodes being able to communicate with each other. If it's fiber-based or copper-based, if you just take out one of those critical nodes, and which happened in the East Coast a few years ago, they lost connectivity in the entire East Coast, and that was just a minor screw-up. So it's amazing that something as delicate as cellular connectivity, as GPS, as power, works as well as it does. And we've all taken that for granted. And we're all going to be shocked. Even if everything is up, it's still likely to be overloaded with the cell towers, as happened with 9/11. So you need to have some kind of prior planning with your family, how you all are going to communicate. Now, this might go back to 19th century technology, where you have to leave Post-it notes on your door, letting your family know where you went. And one thing you should do now, maybe consider it, is basically have a plan where we have an A location, a B location, a C, and a D. So, Aunt Susie in LA is our location B, and our in-laws location C. And everybody unequivocally understands that if they can't communicate, you just go in order. And whoever gets there first, if it's unsafe, if the stores that you've had, the supplies you've stored there are ravaged, then leave a note saying, go to location C. The risk of just putting the specific address is that anybody else who comes across that is going to know, well, these people have supplies there, so let's see if we can beat them to it. Did anybody see that movie made by the Obamas, Leave the World Behind? No? It's a silly movie. I'm not going to recommend it for its cinematic qualities, but the concepts in it are pretty valuable, where just watch it. Again, I'm not giving my subjective recommendation for it, but yes,
Oh,
yeah. And it gives you some food for thought as to what might happen, when you don't have basic supplies, when you don't have communication, when there's mass misinformation and it's completely confusing. Our GPS satellites are extremely vulnerable to being hacked. And the next major conflict is probably going to be in cyberspace before it's on the battle space. Just that's our biggest vulnerability. So have the ability to leave notes. The extreme Post-it notes are far better than just the regular Post-it notes for their water resistance and their stickiness. This is a satellite communicator. You can send text messages. If you have a new iPhone, you probably do have the ability to communicate. I think it's just with the 911 or 911 emergency communications. You're not going to be able to necessarily make phone calls through satellite. This allows you to send messages, assuming the satellites haven't been compromised, when there's no power, no cell signal. It will allow you to see the location of your family members. It's called a Garmin InReach Mini. They're on the 2nd generation now. The downside is you do have to pay for a monthly subscription, but it may be worth it if you use it for more than just the apocalypse. It has an SOS button, so if you're driving somewhere, you can press that button, and they have their own third-party private dispatch center that will identify your location and route help to you. Starlink is also something to consider, because you don't have to pay for the monthly service for Starlink. You can get the portability plan where you just pay 1 month at a time. And since so many things are over the internet now, including voice over IP, where you possibly could make phone calls or texts over Starlink, that has become a viable alternative. Satellite phones are prohibitively expensive. Any kind of satellite internet is still very slow because it's high Earth orbit. Starlink uses low Earth orbit, so the delay is a fraction of what it used to be. It really is an amazing technology. And again, you can buy it, set it, and forget it, and then power it with a solar panel and a power station and have internet. And that's helpful for more than just what you want to watch on Netflix. Everything you want to look up that you haven't looked up before, that you're not familiar with, such as first aid, you're probably going to want to Google. That's assuming the servers are still up, but maybe you have important documents on your Google Drive. If you don't have everything printed out now, that could be a useful way to access critical information. Phone numbers, addresses. If you can write that down, if you can get a map now, if you can circle those locations now of your alternative locations, if you can print out critical contacts, if you can print out photos of your kids, of your pets, all those things are very useful to do now. Even if the pet or the person looks a little different in 10 or 20 years, it'll still be better than nothing. And I'm going to skip over a few of these. This is a waterproof notepad, waterproof pen. This is a GMRS radio. The cheap radios you see at Walmart, those are usually FRS. GMRS is different. It will say GMRS on the package. And these walkie-talkies also give you the NOAA red weather broadcast, which is more than just weather. It's emergency broadcast. And you do have your car, but a lot of cars now don't have AM radio. So this allows you to communicate with your family members when there's no cell signal, there's no other way to reach them. If each of you has a GMRS radio in your go bag and you've practiced this at least once, so you know how to at least operate the thing, that could be critical in terms of locating your family members, helping them avoid fatal congestion. At the Paradise Fire, people died in their cars. They didn't know where to evacuate. This could allow them to say, hey, go to the fairgrounds. That's where we're going to meet. If you get within the vicinity of each other, and 30, 40 miles if it's line of sight. When it's more congested, you're going to get a couple miles.